Thank you for listening. This course was created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional podcasts, books, newsletters, and cool merchandise await. Let's get started. Telemetry is the systematic collection of operational data that gives you real-time insight into how an AI system behaves in production. At its core, telemetry captures events, metrics, and traces that describe inputs, outputs, resource usage, and environmental conditions so engineers can understand what happened, when, and where. In practice, this means recording model input-output pairs, latency and error metrics, retry counts, and system-level signals like CPU and GPU utilization. It can also include richer traces such as retrieval contexts, token-level confidences, and provenance markers. Telemetry matters because it turns ephemeral interactions into durable evidence you can analyze for trends, anomalies, and regressions. Without it, issues are invisible until customers complain. Think of telemetry as the sensors on a machine. They do not fix problems by themselves, but they tell you which parts are overheating, which subsystems misbehave, and where to probe next. As you instrument, favor consistency, structured schemas, and minimal overhead so telemetry informs decisions rather than becoming a cost center. Observability is the property of a system that allows you to infer its internal state from the external signals you collect, logs, metrics, and traces, and to use those signals to diagnose, predict, and prevent problems. Unlike raw telemetry, which is data, observability is a mindset and practice. It asks whether the data you collect are sufficient, correlated, and contextualized to answer the questions you will later face during incidents. A truly observable AI platform makes it straightforward to answer, why did this misprediction happen? Which upstream change caused this latency spike? Or, what sequences of inputs lead to policy violation? By combining traces that map data flows, metrics that quantify performance degradation, and logs that capture decision points and errors. Observability emphasizes instrumentation, design-rich context, causal linking across services, and end-to-end correlation, so that troubleshooting is not a scavenger hunt. In short, telemetry is the raw sensory input. Observability is your ability to reason about what the sensors imply. Telemetry sources are diverse and must be chosen to cover the critical surfaces that matter for reliability and security. At the application level, model input-output logs capture user prompts, system messages, retrieved contexts, and generated responses. These are invaluable for both functional debugging and post-mortem analysis. System performance metrics, CPU-GPU usage, memory pressure, queue lengths, and process times reveal resource bottlenecks that can cause timeouts or degraded defenses. User access attempts and authentication logs show who asked what and when, enabling detection of credential abuse or anomalous query patterns. Plugin and connector interactions such as external API calls, file reads/writes, and database operations complete the picture by linking model decisions to real-world side effects. When you design telemetry, think in layers. Capture what the model sees, how the system handles it, and what external effects occur so you can trace an outcome back to causal inputs and policy decisions. The security use of telemetry is broad and operationally essential. It enables detection of adversarial prompts, monitoring of unauthorized access, anomaly-based alerting, and the collection of forensic evidence for incident response. Adversarial prompt detection benefits when telemetry captures not only the prompt text, but also surrounding context, recent conversation turns, retrieval passages, and user history, because many attacks are multi-stage and only visible in sequence. Authentication and access logs let you spot credential abuse or token replay by correlating geographic anomalies, impossible travel, or bursty query patterns tied to a single token. Anomaly-based alerting systems leverage baselines from telemetry normal token distributions typical latency ranges, expected retrieval top K behavior to surface deviations that signature-based detectors miss. Finally, robust telemetry creates the forensic trail you need for root cause analysis and regulatory reporting: who queried what, which documents were retrieved, what the model output, and which policies were invoked or bypassed. Security without telemetry is reactive. With it, you can be proactive and accountable. Privacy considerations must be central when you design telemetry, because the very logs that help you secure systems can also contain sensitive or identifying information. Adopt the principle of minimization. Collect only the fields necessary for observability and security, and avoid persisting full user prompts where possible. Store hashed identifiers, redacted snippets, or synthesize summaries instead. Mask and token redact sensitive fields, PII, PHI, secrets, before logs leave the inference boundary, and apply field-level encryption for high-sensitivity artifacts so access controls can be granular. Retention policy compliance means defining both how long telemetry is kept and the justification for retention aligned with regulatory needs. Shorter retention windows reduce risk but may limit forensic depth, so document trade-offs and maintain secure archival for legally required records. Finally, encrypt logs in transit and at rest, and enforce strict access controls and audit trails on telemetry stores so only authorized teams can reconstruct sensitive sequences. Privacy and observability are not opposites. Thoughtful design lets you have both insight and protection. Monitoring inference in real time means more than simply collecting every prompt and response. It requires instrumenting the inference path so you can spot behavioral drift and emergent attacks as they unfold. Track each request with a correlation identifier that links the raw user prompt, the retrieval context, the model checkpoint, and any post-processing validator so you can replay end-to-end behavior later. Watch latency spikes and unusual context window sizes as early indicators. Sudden increases in generation time often accompany complex adversarial payloads or overloaded retrievals, and abnormal context lengths can signal padding attacks or attempts to push critical instructions outside guarded windows. Pay attention to token-level anomalies, unexpected character encodings, rare token sequences, or spikes in low-probability token emissions, which frequently betray obfuscated injection attempts. Establish sampling and aggregation strategies so you can retain representative traces for forensic analysis without storing every raw string indefinitely. The balance between fidelity and privacy is a design decision you must make consciously and document. In practice, real-time inference monitoring becomes your primary early warning system, allowing you to throttle, quiesce, or reroute suspicious flows before they reach downstream systems or users. Monitoring training requires its own telemetry strategy, because the training phase is where many systemic risks originate and where poisoning or drift first become measurable. Surface gradient norms and loss curves at multiple granularities per batch, per shard, and per worker, so sudden divergence or vanishing gradients do not go unnoticed. Track data pipeline health. Ingestion rates, sampling distributions, and schema conformity checks reveal when a fresh data source begins to skew the training distribution. Resource consumption anomalies, unexpected GPU memory growth, jitter and shuffle timings, or irreproducible checkpoint sizes often precede corrupted checkpoints or silent data leaks. Instrument model-level statistics such as layer activation distributions, embedding space drift, and per-token perplexities across slices to detect subtle shifts that could indicate a poisoning attempt or a tokenizer change. Because training often happens at scale, design automated guardrails that halt or quarantine runs when key indicators cross thresholds, and preserve full ephemeral snapshots and manifests for post-mortem analysis. Quick stop and inspect beats, allowing a compromised checkpoint to propagate into production and multiply harm. Choosing metrics for observability converts raw telemetry into governance-ready signals that guide action and investment. Define success and error rates that are meaningful to your users, task-level accuracy for core features, supported claim rates where grounding matters, and policy violation counts for safety-critical flows, and treat these as living service-level objectives. Measure false positive ratios for detectors and validators carefully, because excessive noise erodes analyst attention and causes alert fatigue. Balance precision and recall to fit your operational capacity. Detection latency is a vital metric. How long does it take from an anomalous signal to an actionable alert? Short detection windows reduce the attacker's dwell time, but investing in speed has cost implications. System availability and end-to-end latency percentiles reflect the user-facing impact of observability measures. Heavy instrumentation should not cripple responsiveness. Slice these metrics by tenant, language, model version, and feature to reveal heterogeneous risk profiles, and surface trending and anomaly detection on the metrics themselves so you are alerted when your observability platform degrades or when an emerging failure pattern appears. Metrics are effective only when coupled to ownership and remediation playbooks. Alerting mechanisms translate observed anomalies into human or machine actionable items, and good design reduces both missed threats and avoidable noise. Rather than firing on single threshold events, use correlated signals across layers combining unusual authentication behavior, spikes in rare tokens, and rises in validation rejections, to increase confidence before escalating. Implement alert tiers, advisory notices for low-confidence events, operational alerts that trigger automated mitigations like rate limiting or temporary conservative policies, and critical pagers that awaken responders when high-risk thresholds or multi-signal agreement occurs. Tie alerts to documented escalation paths and playbooks so the next steps are clear: who investigates, what logs to pull, which containment actions are permissible, and when legal or communications must be notified. Where appropriate, enable automated responses that act within bounded parameters. Circuit breakers that pause a model version, throttles that limit a token or session, or ephemeral revocation of connector keys, so defenders can buy time to investigate. Finally, instrument feedback loops, so false positives prompt detector tuning and manual adjudications feed labeled datasets for retraining, reducing future noise and improving precision over time. Integration with Security Operations Centers (SOC) ensures telemetry does not sit in isolation but becomes part of organizational defense and incident triage. Forward relevant telemetry into your SIEM with contextual enrichment. Attach model version, index snapshot identifiers, correlation IDs, and policy decisions so analysts get a single pane that links identity, model behavior, and system effects. Align detection rules and alert formats with society workflows, so cases surface with triage priorities, escalation timelines, and suggested containment steps rather than raw logs. Use red team replay validation. When adversarial campaigns occur, replay captured traces into mirrored detectors to validate that society rules would have fired and to generate labeled incidents for improvement. Ensure forensic evidence immutable logs, signed manifests of index updates, and snapshot hashes are available to investigators with the appropriate access controls and chain of custody documentation. This integration enables coordinated responses that span model engineers, platform operators, and security analysts, converting telemetry into not only situational awareness but also coordinated remediation and legal-grade post-incident narratives. Scaling observability systems requires deliberate architecture because telemetry volumes grow quickly and queries must remain actionable under load. Design distributed log ingestion with partitioning keys aligned to your access pattern's tenant, model version, or data domain, so hot shards do not create bottlenecks for unrelated teams. Choose storage backends that differentiate hot, warm, and cold data. Keep recent traces and alerting indexes highly available for rapid queries, while archiving older, lower-value artifacts to compressed, queryable cold stores for compliance and post-mortem analysis. Streaming analysis platforms let you run near real-time detectors over live telemetry without round-tripping to bulk stores, but they require careful scaling policies and backpressure handling to avoid data loss during surges. High-availability design, including multi-region redundancy and graceful degradation modes, ensures observability remains operational during partial outages so you never lose the signals precisely when you need them. Finally, control costs through sampling, summarization, and adaptive retention policies that preserve fidelity for high-risk slices while economizing on routine traffic. And make those trade-offs explicit to stakeholders so observability delivers insight sustainably rather than generating unmanageable data hordes. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Visualization dashboards are the interpretive surface where telemetry and observability become actionable decisions rather than raw data dumps. Well-designed dashboards present layered views, high-level executive summaries that show service health and risk posture for non-technical stakeholders, medium-level operational panels that reveal trends in inference traffic, validation rejections, and latency percentiles for SREs and product leads, and deep drill-down tracing tools that let engineers follow a single request across retrieval, generation, and validation stages. Heat maps that correlate anomaly density with model versions, tenants, or geographic regions highlight where problems concentrate, while time series charts expose transient incidents versus slow drifts. Good dashboards also enable exploration, click-to-filter, linked correlations, and pre-built queries for common incident hypotheses. Importantly, dashboards are not merely telemetry displays. They encode priority and story, what matters, where to look first, and which artifacts support a hypothesis, so teams can move swiftly from observation to remediation without getting lost in raw logs. Proactive use of telemetry turns observability into operational advantage rather than a post-failure forensic tool. By analyzing trends in capacity, latency, and error rates, teams can perform capacity planning that anticipates scale and avoids defensive trade-offs during peak load, deploying edge filters, scaling validator clusters, or pre-warming retrieval nodes before demand spikes. Telemetry informs reliability improvements when root cause patterns repeat. A recurring correlation between specific connector calls and timeouts suggests redesigning the connector contract or adding circuit breakers. Security posture scoring aggregates signals policy violation rates, unsupported claim rates, and anomalous access attempts into a composite indicator that management can track and that security can use to prioritize hardening work. Resilience measurement means quantifying how quickly the system returns to acceptable behavior after perturbation, time to degrade safely, time to roll back, and time to re-establish normal throughput, transforming vague confidence into measurable recovery objectives you can improve systematically. Continuous improvement is the operational discipline that converts incidents into learning and telemetry into higher detector fidelity. After every alert or postmortem, feed structured artifacts back into evaluation and training, the prompts that caused failures, the retrieved passages that influenced hallucinations, and the validator logs that misfired become labeled examples for retraining classifiers or augmenting adversarial test suites. Refine metrics iteratively. When a detector produces too many false positives, analyze the distribution of alerts, adjust thresholds, and augment training sets with adjudicated cases to improve precision. When false negatives appear, craft new adversarial templates to expand coverage. Over time, you reduce alert fatigue by tuning detectors to human operational capacity and by introducing triage tiers that surface only the most consequential items to on-call staff. Critically, closed-loop improvement requires governance. Define who approves metric changes, how to benchmark detector upgrades, and how to verify that tuning did not open new blind spots. Continuous improvement turns observability from a reporting tool into an engine of measurable risk reduction. Observability has limits that prudent teams must acknowledge and manage rather than ignore. Data volume can overwhelm even well-architected pipelines. High-fidelity traces for every request are costly to store and slow to query, so sampling strategies are necessary. But sampling risks missing rare, high-impact sequences. Missing signals are another problem. If instrumentation gaps exist, no correlation ID across services, or absent retrieval context, then causality becomes opaque and investigations stall. Proper logging discipline matters. Inconsistent schema, missing timestamps, and varying time zones break correlation and reduce the ability to infer causality. Human interpretation gaps persist too. Dashboards can present correlations without causal proof, and teams may misattribute root causes without careful experiment design. Finally, observability depends on configuration. Detectors tuned to current attack patterns will lag novel strategies, so you must invest in diverse signal sources and periodic auditing to detect blind spots. Accepting these limitations upfront lets you design compensating controls, defensive diversity, conservative defaults, and well-documented gaps. So observability supports resilience without promising impossible omniscience. Emerging tools promise to expand what observability can do, but they require careful integration and governance to be effective. AI-driven anomaly detection adds a layer of adaptive signal discovery, surfacing subtle patterns of abuse or drift that static rules miss. Yet these systems demand high-quality training signals and guardrails to avoid learning adversarial shortcuts. Unified observability platforms simplify correlation by ingesting traces, metrics, and logs into a single queryable fabric, often with native support for distributed tracing frameworks. Adopting open telemetry standards eases vendor lock-in and encourages portability of instrumentation across clouds. Distributed tracing frameworks matured for microservices are now extending to multi-stage model pipelines, linking retrievals, vector lookups, and generation spans into coherent traces. Governance integration is essential. Map observability metrics to policy controls, generate audit-ready evidence for compliance, and feed executive summaries into board-level reporting so telemetry informs strategic risk decisions. Emerging tools raise the bar for detection and diagnosis, but their value multiplies only when paired with disciplined policy mapping, access controls, and clear stewardship for telemetry assets. Accountability follows naturally when observability metrics are embedded in organizational roles and review cycles. Define who owns each class of signals and what their responsibilities are. An SRE team owns latency and availability dashboards, a security team triages anomalous access and injection markers, and product owners evaluate supported claim rates and feature-specific regressions. Establish routine governance cadences where these owners present telemetry summaries, explain trends, and commit to remediation plans with clear dates and acceptance criteria. Make escalation rules explicit. What conditions move an incident from operational triage to executive notification, and automate the creation of evidence bundles for each level so decision-makers see both cause and consequence. Training and shared vocabulary are essential. When engineers, compliance officers, and executives use the same definitions for policy violation or high-risk anomaly, conversations are efficient and decisions repeatable. Accountability rooted in telemetry closes the loop between detection and responsibility, making observability a governance tool rather than an obscure analytics project. The strategic benefits of a mature telemetry and observability program extend across risk reduction, operational resilience, and commercial trust. Faster incident detection materially reduces mean time to detect and to contain, limiting the window during which adversaries can exploit weaknesses. Rich, auditable telemetry shortens regulatory reviews and procurement cycles. When you can show time-stamped logs, evidence of policy enforcement, and reproducible remediation steps, partners and regulators gain confidence more quickly. Observability also supports continuous improvement by surfacing persistent pain points, connectors that repeatedly cause latency, validators that produce disproportionate false positives, or index sources that attract poison shards, enabling targeted investments that raise overall system quality. From a product perspective, telemetry informs feature prioritization. If a new connector drives a spike in validation rejections, you can delay broad rollout until mitigations are in place. In sum, observability is not merely diagnostics. It is a strategic capability that reduces uncertainty, accelerates safe innovation, and builds credibility with customers and regulators. Operationalizing observability well demands investment in people, process, and tooling that you must plan and budget for explicitly. Staffing includes platform engineers to build and maintain ingestion pipelines, security analysts to triage anomalous signals, data scientists to tune detectors and reduce false positives, and governance leads to translate metrics into policy. Processes must define life cycle stages for telemetry: design, deployment, review, and retirement, with clear handoffs and audit logs for schema changes or detector thresholds. Tooling choices matter. Open telemetry standards ease vendor interoperability, streaming analysis platforms enable near real-time detection, and cost-aware storage tiers keep long-term archives feasible. Importantly, observability programs need regular health checks, audits of instrumentation coverage, drills that validate end-to-end correlation IDs, and spot audits that ensure retention policies and access controls work as intended. When people, process, and tools align, observability becomes sustainable and repeatable, rather than a brittle, short-lived project that fails as scale and complexity grow. You must also confront the socio-technical dimensions of observability: how people interpret signals, how teams respond under stress, and how organizational culture shapes attention. Avoid a posture of blaming operators for noisy alerts. Design feedback mechanisms that let teams annotate false positives and refine detectors without fear of repercussion. Create playbooks that are pragmatic, automated mitigations for common, low-severity anomalies, human-in-the-loop adjudication for ambiguous high-impact cases, and executive escalation for incidents that cross legal or reputational thresholds. Invest in training so reviewers can reliably interpret evidence packets and rotate responsibilities to prevent expertise concentration. Transparency to stakeholders matters too. Publish regular observability health reports that explain what you measure, known blind spots, and recent improvements, building trust through candor rather than overpromising coverage. Observability succeeds when systems and people learn together. Metrics guide technical fixes, and human judgment refines detectors, creating a virtuous cycle of improved detection and reduced operational friction. In closing, telemetry and observability are the foundations of operational security for generative AI. They provide the data, context, and inferential power needed to detect adversarial activity, diagnose incidents, and demonstrate governance. We have covered the essential sources to instrument inputs, outputs, retrieval context, system metrics, and access logs, and the signals that enable causal reasoning across traces, errors, and timing. We discussed privacy constraints you must honor even as you collect evidence, the practical metrics and alerting patterns that drive action, and the architectural choices needed to scale ingestion and analysis without losing fidelity. We also explored how observability integrates with society workflows, supports governance and compliance, and yields strategic benefits in trust and resilience. Observability is not optional telemetry. It is the operational lens through which you see, understand, and manage the evolving risks of AI systems. Part 4 complete, 24/24 paragraphs delivered. Thanks for tuning in to Bare Metal Cyber, your trusted source for cybersecurity educational materials, news, and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.